Hey, it's April, and today I'm going to be finishing my demigod doll. Now, if you saw my last video, you will have seen me unboxing this crazy beautiful ball jointed doll from Ace of Dolls. He's the demigod body with an Ambrosia faceplate. I finished his standard or casual look, but I still need to make his final form. As I mentioned previously, I see him as a warrior type character, so I want to create a fantasy battle look to reflect that. So let's get started. First of all, I wrap the body in cling film to make sure I don't stain it with any bits of clay or anything, and to ensure it's nice and easy to peel the pieces off later. I then grabbed some Apoxie Sculpt and started squishing the base into place for his arm armour. I'm not too worried about this part looking rough, as I want to sculpt the actual details with Fimo, but that needs baking, so I need to make a base first that I can air dry. So I'm just mushing the shapes together and making sure it's nice and tight to the arm. I noticed whilst watching this back that it's very similar to the style I sculpted Maro's arm in, only I'll be painting this one to look like metal rather than bone. I take a lot of inspiration from anime and manga, and one of my all-time favourites is Tutumi Nihei. His character and creature designs blend organic and metal structures so perfectly. It's really beautiful and interesting to look at, but also feels very dark and menacing. I completely fell in love with that aesthetic, and I tried to incorporate a similar feel with some of my designs, so you'll definitely see this style of sculpting popping up a lot in my videos. I'm attaching some wires to anchor the spikes later, and also so I know what size the spikes should be. You may have noticed the odd looking band lines that appeared out of nowhere. I was a bit worried that the pieces weren't tight enough to his arm, so I wrapped elastic bands around them whilst they were curing. Once everything's fully dried, I can peel them off and start adding the Fimo Clay. It's a lot easier to do detail work with this stuff, as, well, mainly because I'm not on a time limit for a start, but also because it holds shape so much better. Epoxy's really heavy, so any spikes or anything tend to sag if there's not a ton of wire underneath, whereas Fimo just stays put. And I can properly smooth it out so it doesn't require as much sanding afterwards. I then got a cotton bud and some rubbing alcohol and cleaned up the surface. I love doing this part, it's extremely satisfying. I then started sculpting the second one, same as before, just lots of lumps, bumps and weird little shapes. And then smoothing it out with the alcohol. I'm pretty happy with them both, so time to pop them in the oven. And once they had fully cooled, I can check the fit. So about that, yeah, the second one is way too big. I clearly got carried away or something, but I like it too much to sand it down, so I'm going to save that for another doll and made this smaller version instead. Now they fit great, so let's make his hand match the arm. I didn't bother with the cling film this time, as I don't need it to be removable. I have spare hands for him, so I can just switch them out. Plus, making this kind of piece removable just would have been an absolute nightmare and wouldn't have looked anywhere near as good. Smoothing everything out. The ball tool is really the hero of this video. Honestly, I hardly used anything else. It's just perfect for textured blending. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with asymmetrical armour. I can't help it. I really love it. Really not about the symmetrical armour. And that's the hand all armoured up, so moving on to the wing. So when it comes to making appendages, I usually just drill holes in the body and then attach them with wires, but doing that with this one, it'd just feel wrong, so instead I'm going for a sort of backpack style. I started by making this lump on the back, which will be the main part that the wing goes into. Then moved on to the front, adding lots of little worms of clay that I'll then blend together. Connect it to the back piece with a nice chunky blob of clay. and keep moving the arms to make sure I'm not restricting articulation. I'm adding holes to the side furthest away from the wing. I feel like the metal wouldn't be as thick here because it's sort of just leaching away from the main part. Peel it off, and that's the base sorted. But we still need an actual wing, so I drew a template on some paper, then grabbed some wire to make the skeleton. I started by twisting the longest pieces together to get the length, and then wrapped those together with some thinner wire. Bent them into shape, and that's the frame done, so now I can start adding the Fimo. The idea here is that they are bones and that they've been covered in liquid metal, which is why I'm adding all the drippy spiky shapes. I realised that it'd probably be easier to just cover all the wire first and bend it into shape. Then I can add all the lumps and bumps and blend it all out. Add the final spikes, and that's the wing ready to attach to the backpack later on. For the first part of his belt, I took a piece of wire that I'd shaped against his waist, and then added some clay shapes. I then poked a hole in either end, so that the other half of the wire just slots into place. That way I can clip it onto his waist and be able to take it off no problem. For the second piece, again, I just took some wire and added random clay shapes. For the final piece, I took a big spiky pendant that I'd made earlier and attached that to the wire with some clay. Bulked it out, leaving the loops at the top so that I can stitch them onto his fabric belt. And that's the belt's finished, so onto the last piece of sculpted equipment, his staff. I twisted some wire together and bent to give me a base, and then covered the main pole part in Fimo. Then used more Fimo to start building up the spikes on each end. By the way, there's no actual reason for the random colour changes in the clay. I was just trying to use up all my leftovers and scraps, so just ignore how strange that looks. I'm obviously sticking with the same style as the armour. I'm hoping that it'll look sort of like molten metal fused together. I want it to feel like he could have literally pulled this from the earth rather than some fancy polished staff. I made sure to leave holes to attach the spikes later on. And one big nest on top for the big spike. Smooth it out and we have a staff. Well, sort of. There's still some pieces that need cleaning up, so I drew some template marks and then went in with my Dremel. Finished off with a fine grit sanding sponge, and then brushed off the dust. It's honestly amazing how much of a difference a bit of sanding makes. It looks so much cleaner. And this is what we are left with. Now to paint it all shiny and silvery. So I'm really dumb and I accidentally went in with chrome paint, which is not the one, so I switched it out to the correct silver. Much better. As much as I love this silver paint, it looks very, very polished and a little flat on large areas, so I'm using a black wash to try and get closer to that natural metal ore look I'm aiming for. And I think it looks much better this way. I I also dry brushed a little silver back on where I went too heavy with the black. Now to attach the wing, I'm filling the hole with hot glue and then pushing it into place. I also covered the visible wire with glue to blend it into the main part. Paint to match. And the strangest backpack is a success. To add the spikes to his staff, I'm using clear nail gel and pushing it into place. I want them to be translucent red, so they seem like the best option. I painted the base of each piece with a dark red, and then covered the rest with a clear red. Brushed on a UV top coat for maximum glossy yumminess. I really wanted the spikes to stand out from the metal. It would have looked a bit too basic if it was all silver, and I thought using the red would tie in really well with his eyes. Plus, fantasy characters often have a colour associated with their power, and his would definitely be red. And that's all his equipment ready. But I did decide to make a couple of other changes too. I want to lighten his eyelashes and the crease lines. I think it will give a softer look overall, especially in photos and from a distance, and I really like that contrast against the aggressive looking armour. Plus it makes them look fluffier, and the fluffier the better. I also wanted to try a different eye method, so they look more intensely red. He is powered up in this form after all, so his eyes would be glowing. I took 2 clay blobs and made a hole with my Dremel. And then painted with acrylics. I'm using a pink and red gradient this time and avoiding those dark shadows and pupil. I coated the base with a UV top coat. Then added a tiny ball of nail gel in each eye for the pupil. Painted it red. And filled with UV resin. And he has new eyes. For the finishing touches, I'm adding some admittedly slightly oversized piercing balls. And his new face-up is complete. It's only very subtle changes, but I actually really prefer this version. What do you think? His belly area is looking a little plain, so let's add more piercing balls. And a big silver arm tattoo to match his face. To me, this style looks like it could be some sort of angelic symbols, which I think ties into the demigod theme really well. And with that, his upgrades are complete, so let's check out his final form. I hope you enjoyed watching my demigod character come to life, and I'll be back soon with Pride, the final demon for my 7 Sins collection. See you next time!